YouTube is changing. Like, watch this intro from Mr. Beast.
This is a $1 billion super yacht.
Here it is in Vietnamese.
Đây là một siêu du thuyền trị giá $1 tỷ.
And in Hindi.
ये है पूरे $1 billion की super yacht.
Multi-language audio on YouTube is just one of the trends that we dive into in this video. And that's because today we're interviewing the most interesting employee at YouTube. His name is Kevin Allocca, and he's the global head of culture and trends. And every year, Kevin and his team put together the YouTube Culture and Trends Report, which really boils down the top trends from the past year on YouTube. Now, as big YouTube nerds, Colin and I have been...
Speak for yourself.
Okay, Colin, we're pretty big nerds.
Have any of you seen the Culture and Trends YouTube channel? Okay, so it's one of the lesser known YouTube channels by YouTube, but Samir and I actually love it.
So as YouTube nerds, Colin and I have been big fans of this report for the past 3 years. And this year we asked YouTube if we could help distribute the report to all of you because we find it incredibly valuable. YouTube sponsored this episode, thank you YouTube, and they gave us the report early so that we could make this video. So in this interview, we dive into the trends report and we watch some of the videos from it. Videos that range from bizarre to incredibly insightful. We also make some predictions on where we think the future of YouTube is headed. All right, let's get into it. This is our interview with the global head of culture and trends at YouTube, Kevin Allocca. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you.
It's very exciting to have you here. We've had this conversation many times off camera and off mic, but now we get to have it here.
That's right.
Which is very exciting.
I will say, every time that Samir and I have heard you speak, afterwards, we've looked at each other and said, man, I wish we could have just recorded that and put it on our channel. Not to put too much pressure on you. But we've always loved like what you've brought to the table and the perspective that you bring. I feel like you are YouTube's in-house reference librarian meets social anthropologist.
That's very nice of you to say.
What is your official title at YouTube?
I'm the Global Director of Culture and Trends.
Okay.
Which I made up. To be totally transparent with you. There's a whole Culture and Trends team whose titles we all made up as well.
Okay, got it.
But what happened was, I've been at YouTube for almost 13 years. And what happened was, very early on, we realized that when you're a content platform, there's this unique need to try to understand what's actually happening on your, like if you're a TV network, you don't need someone to explain what's happening on your TV network. But when you're a content platform, there is this sort of requirement or need where you have to have a deep understanding of the dynamics of what's actually at play on your platform. What is driving the popular culture of your platform? Because you don't necessarily control it in the way that you would a traditional media platform or something. And so these are all things, the thread between all of this stuff, you know, if I'm at a bar, it's like I work on projects that help people find and understand what's popular on YouTube. Lots of different business applications for that, but that's the crux of it. It's
really interesting what you said about the difference between traditional media and a platform like YouTube. I hadn't really thought of it like that YouTube doesn't really decide what's popular. The audience decides. Like it's about consumer behavior and also creator behavior. It's whatever we are uploading as creators and how that intersects with what consumers are watching is what defines what YouTube is.
Yeah, and in fact, I would say in many cases, it's the opposite of what everybody wished it was in certain times. You know, like you can imagine being a burgeoning content platform and you're trying to, you're trying to compete with television for advertisers and things, and the most popular creators on the platform are playing video games. You know, that's like not exactly what you wouldn't want if you were trying to sell something at that time. But of course, that doesn't matter because you're following the audience. You're following the creators define the platform, which is a very unique thing in the history of media. And now you see this type of function in different platforms and stuff. YouTube's not the only place where this type of thinking happens in the same way, but we were one of the early ones because we were so big and got into it on the earlier side.
So given that you have such a unique perspective on YouTube and this bird's eye view, and you have for so many years, could you give us an example of an interesting trend that you saw on the platform?
There had been this thing that I saw. This is very early when I started at YouTube. I remember there was a video of a guy riding an elevator up and down. Like just, he would go into he'd film himself going into the elevator, narrating the experience, go into the elevator, hit a button, go up 10 flights, come back down 10 flights, turn around, get the other view up and down, and then leave. And it had tens of thousands of views, right? And I could not figure out why this, like one of my favorite things about YouTube is trying to like this little mystery of like, why does someone like this? Like that's the driving function of a lot of the work I do. Why does someone like this? Like that's the thing that fascinates me, gets me up in the morning, trying to unpack why we like the things we like. And I just couldn't figure it out. I just thought it was like, oh, people like weird stuff on the internet, you know? So I kind of moved on from it. And then I was like, you know what? I got to go back and figure out what that elevator thing was about. So I found this channel, massive audience, that all videos like this. And I was like, hey, can we chat? I just need to understand what's going on. And he lived in Virginia and he was a train conductor. And he basically had always, for his entire life, been obsessed with elevators. And he just one day started filming them, put it on the internet, and he found all these other people that were also obsessed with elevators. And there are elevator channels all over the world. Finland, I found them in Brazil. There's tons of people. And I was, but like, why? What's the appeal here? And he's like, a large percentage of my audience are actually people with autism. And there's something about the experience of sight, sound, motion, and how people's brains work that it makes that a really appealing thing. And so his channel was actually not about the elevators. It was actually about this sort of community of people with autism who all were interested in this thing together. And they only knew most people who are into that only knew that anyone else was into it because they saw it on YouTube. Like they thought they were the only person in the world that was so interested in that as a topic. And he discovered through this experience that there were other people like him. And that is a particularly poignant story, I think, of this, but you see it happen constantly on the platform, things that fly in the face of our expectations of popularity, of interest, of entertainment.
Yeah.
But that, and our perspective as a team has always been, we don't make value judgments about what people watch. There's obviously certain things that are inappropriate and problematic and stuff, and that's its own tier of thing. But I think we're so quick, and we have been so quick to in the sort of history of media to dismiss things that we don't understand as like being outlier content or someone's weird choice or whatever. But if you stop that, if you just say, why would someone like this, and you try to unpack it, it unlocks a whole world of stuff, and it explains a lot of what happens on YouTube.
Totally.
I mean, ASMR is another one.
Yeah.
Like, that for years, people at YouTube didn't even like me talking about ASMR because they're like, this is some weird thing. And I was like, no, this is people using video in a way that you just would never think of, but it's meaningful to them,
I've gotten into lawnmower YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
Lawnmower YouTube is fantastic. Have you seen any of this?
I have.
I posted it in our Discord yesterday. There's this guy, Tim, who will go around and mow people's lawns.
Yeah.
And it's like an act of kindness, which is nice. He'll do it for them. But it's so engaging. It's so satisfying to watch a lawn get mowed.
There are also like lawnmower simulator games where you put yourself in the world of you're driving the lawnmower.
Yeah.
And I think it has to do with like this soothing experience
it's
that
very
maybe
soothing.
you could, you obviously could get that in real life,
Yeah.
but there's something soothing about it.
Adjacent to the power washing content, which is also
Yeah,
kind
which
of
is
in that
fantastic.
same sphere.
Love
I'm
good power
into
washing.
drain unclogging. I don't know if you've seen Post 10.
I haven't matured into that yet.
It's he goes out around unclogs like stuck drains on the street.
Yes.
It's
I mean, that
just- there's
sounds
something
really great. Yeah.
So fascinating about it. But
I think 2022, if you look at it, was this incredible year of growth, I think, for creators and for the creator economy and for YouTube. I look at 2023 as one that's being defined by change. For creators, for audiences, it feels like there is so much change, so much of it also being wrapped up by AI, specifically generative AI and the tools that we have as creators. Obviously, this is a part of the Culture and Trends report. Can you give us some insight into what you found when it comes to generative AI on YouTube?
I wanted to start with what is interesting here. Like what's happening? What do we know is happening right now that we should be excited about? Maybe what could this be from that perspective? Because I think we all have a healthy skepticism about what it could be that we're not excited about.
Sure.
And I think there are new things constantly. We're like, oh, I didn't realize I needed to be worried about that, but I do today.
Yep.
And that's going to keep happening with this stuff. But there's people doing interesting stuff with it. I want to find out what is that and what's going on here. And so there's some end of this that we don't even think about as AI. And I think this is interesting how I think most average viewers wouldn't even consider the stuff that they're seeing as AI content because it's not directly, and I don't mean that in that it's deceptive. I mean that in simply it's just a part of the workflow. It's a part of the enhancement of the content. And so you started to see a lot of people just saying like, how can I play with this as part of my workflow? And I think we're still in that phase a little bit of people using it to create prompts for their bodybuilding videos, or, like giving them, little challenges for their beauty videos, and that's like step one.
I mean, the title of this video and this episode will have been enhanced in some way by AI.
Right. And the audience won't know that, or it won't matter.
Until now.
And the the angles for this, if you're watching, we can probably show, but like this will be cut by AI.
Yeah.
Like there is an AI tool that will know when you're talking and when I'm talking, and it will cut it accordingly.
Yeah.
That's an advancement that we've seen as YouTube creators that I did not anticipate this year at all, but that has changed the dynamics of how YouTube video is made.
Yeah.
That's behind the scenes. At least what I've noticed is, what we're seeing as consumers is AI for the first 6 months of the year has been what I would call like the collaborator of the year.
Yeah.
Like every big YouTube creator is collaborating with AI.
Yeah. And I think that the thread between a lot of this stuff is that it is enhancing how people can express themselves at a higher speed and audiovisual fidelity. You can create more complex content faster and sort of higher resolution, essentially, and that is something that I think people invite and are interested in and stuff. And there's certainly all different types of applications to it. But what we're seeing now, and has been the case with a lot of new technologies, is that as creators adopt them, they sort of become normalized. You see them, you see people do things with them, you get inspired by that, and you're like, oh, I could do something with that, and you build on it. And so the next phase of where that starts to take us is into this world where things are much more iterative. Like we already live in one of the things that defines internet video is that it sort of exists in a conversation in a way, right? Like content exists in reaction to other content. Like that doesn't happen with movies and TV and other types of media. It's a lot more interactive in that way. But when you can make things so quickly, like you can edit the video so much faster, take that to its conclusion and all the things that you can do faster, then you can imagine this world in which content exists as conversation, right? And you have every possible remix of the thing or whatever can be done in a very quick amount of time, and everything is building on itself in a way, and it just changes the shape of culture in a way.
It really just lowers the barrier to create, right? I feel like short form content, we would always say, okay, it lowers the barrier to entry. The videos are shorter, they're easier to produce. You can make them on your phone. But now we have things that are being made, just with Midjourney, right? Or 11 Labs, which is like a voice generation tool, and you can create without even a camera.
Yeah.
And to take it a step further, if you look at what Corridor Crew did by using video to then create animation, to create anime, they're now competing with Hollywood. Like it closes the gap between what's possible to be made.
Yeah. We should take a look at the Corridor Crew video.
Wouldn't it be cool if you could film yourself and easily turn into anything you want, like a cartoon character?
This video, particularly for me, felt like the moment that when Colin and I talked about this, and we saw this in the trends report, we said, does this potentially suggest a rise of scripted content on YouTube? What we've seen is YouTube being the home for unscripted content. Vlogs, conversations, just unscripted content. Sure, there's some scripted content on YouTube, but largely it's unscripted. The potential to turn yourself into a, anime character or just be able to create animation this fast, does it suggest like a potential rise in scripted content on YouTube?
Well, as you know, I hate making predictions.
Yes, I know. Okay. I'm gonna
because it's so hard. It's so hard to like.
I will make the prediction.
I want to hear you. I want to hear what you think.
You can say your reaction, and I'll make the prediction. Yeah.
So I think it's a reasonable point of view because fiction content is very labor intensive and things. But the core question I have with it is, there's still, the Corridor guys are actually great storytellers. It's not like they're just a bunch of random people who like typed a thing in and got a thing. Like they know how to tell stories. They're great at what they do. And that is hard that you can't replicate very easily. And so there are many great storytellers in the world. And so the ability for them to tell those stories is enhanced. It should be unlocked. But, will the alchemy come together to have a compelling, narrative experience? Will people want that? It's hard to say.
I feel like they will.
Yeah.
I think especially with watch time going up on TVs, on connected TVs for YouTube. Now, what Corridor Crew did by essentially using video to then create animation, it was not easy. If you watch their video, like they had to troubleshoot a lot, and they're uniquely qualified to make what they made. But I think it shows us what's coming. Like there is, whether a tweet or I don't know what it was, but someone said like, whatever you're looking at right now with AI is the worst version of it you will ever see.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see things like what happened with Corridor Crew, I think, okay, that will be the reality. Shooting video on a green screen to then turn it into any style of content that you want, like that is the reality.
I also think about the concept that as YouTube creators, that's the biggest video library of yourself, right? If you want to build a model of yourself, you as a YouTube creator, if you do talking head videos, or for us doing a long form podcast, like this is a lot of input that potentially you have access to that you can animate or bring to life in different ways with AI, right? The
question you start to ask is what differentiates, right? If everybody can do everything, what breaks through? Like, and it's funny because some people have asked me, what we're going to be flooded with all this content. What are we going to do? There's going to be so much stuff. Like, is it just going to be a low quality dump of stuff from all over the world? I would argue we already have a giant low quality dump of stuff from all over the world. That's like the premise of the company I work for is actually sifting through that to find the things that are going to be most interesting to you. So I have to believe, and perhaps my salary depends on it, but I have to believe that we'll solve that problem.
Right.
And so then the question becomes, what stands out? And it becomes the thing that you can't replicate, which is unique perspectives, creative ideas. The thing that's so interesting to me about this is its potential to make that the defining thing between the pieces of content that we can consume. Right now, there are so many perspectives, so many people's voices that we don't have access to because they don't have the funds, or they don't. I mean, it's gotten so much cheaper to distribute content, but it hasn't gotten that much cheaper to make, to realize a science fiction adventure. Like that is still a very expensive proposition,
Right.
but maybe it won't be in the future. So does that mean that all of those incredible storytellers who write, alt science fiction novellas that aren't going to get their scripts produced, like now can actually bring that into the audiovisual realm? Maybe, and so that's the thing that I think will become interesting through all of this is how does the individual perspective, the core creative idea, the thing that we actually care about get distilled through the course of all of this work.
I also think AI is unlocking fan communities and in a very unique way. The Wes Anderson trend is probably one of the most interesting. I'm a huge fan of Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
And this trend has emerged of what if Wes Anderson made Star Wars? What if Wes Anderson made Lord of the Rings? That's such a fascinating trend to emerge that has reached millions and millions of people that we didn't even know we wanted or wanted to connect with. And to Colin's point, that stuff is made using Midjourney, 11 Labs, and maybe a little bit of editing. There's no cameras involved in making those viral YouTube videos.
In the quaintest corner of Middle-earth, embark on an epic journey unlike any you've experienced before.
And it's interesting that it coincides with this other Wes Anderson trend that uses a much more lightweight type of creative tools around filters, where it's like, I'm going to Wes Anderson in my life. These two things like happen at the same time, and they're obviously interconnected, and he's got a movie coming out and all of this together. And of course, of all people, it's the most handcrafted of directors that is getting like technologically consumed in this whole thing. But yes, there's an argument that fan fiction and fan conversation is going to be much more mainstream than it ever has been because of these tools.
I was going to say, I do want to bring up though that this video particularly stuck out to me in the conversation of the rise of AI on YouTube. This is called U.S. Presidents Play Minecraft 21. I'm going to play it right now.
Hey guys, you know how Manchelle doesn't play with us that much anymore?
Bro, I can invite her back if you want me to.
No, God, please no.
Okay, so get to your point then.
I found a way we can have Manchelle play with us without having to actually play with us.
How would that even work?
This is a video that was uploaded a few weeks ago. Can you describe this video? What is this? I didn't even know this was a genre on YouTube.
Yeah, so there's this President's Play thing. We've seen tons of views around them, in the last couple of months, where people are using this voice generative software to sort of basically imagine what it'd be like if the current and former presidents played Roblox or Minecraft together at the same time. And it's interesting because we've had impersonations and presidential impersonations on YouTube for years. Barack's dubs. This could be a Barack's dubs. When you see it the first time, you're like, it's not obvious that they've used any voice gen. It could just be someone doing an impression. It could be, that we've had that type of stuff on the platform for a while. But now anybody can do that in a sort of quick way, and together you have a phenomenon where everybody has the same prompt essentially, which is, what if the presidents played video games? And then you have tons of people who have their own creative, fun take on what that would look like, and then they just play it out for you. And the best ones, are the ones that get the most views and that people share, or among them at least. And again, it's part of a phenomenon where there's no singular, this is the president's play video. There's some that are better than others, but there's no singular video. It is just a phenomenon spread out across lots of pieces of content, of which we may never see the same ones.
Right.
So obviously this video is a parody.
Yeah.
And I think this is where a lot of people get concerned. You always hear, what if someone puts out a video on behalf of a president or a head of state, and people perceive it as real? And that's where Samir and I talk, and we believe that YouTube at some point will have to be kind of that arbiter of truth for if something has been altered by AI. And I'm sure every platform has to deal with this. I know other platforms are. But I would think that's actually that side that is the concerning one. And the tough challenge will be for YouTube. How do you discern between what is AI, what's not?
Yeah.
When do you step in?
And this is a YouTube problem, but it's also a societal problem.
Yeah.
We're not the only content platform on the internet. There are lots of platforms. I think there are a lot of concerns across public figures, across copyright. There's all of these things that are bigger than any one platform, one piece of one trend that we're going to be grappling with over the next few years. And I think there is our apprehension about this stuff, and it's justified.
Yeah. One of the trends that stuck out to me the most, as it pertains to generative AI and synthetic media and technology, is the rise of Vtubers and virtual humans on YouTube. So, Vtubers have been around for a long time. Colin and I made a video about Lil Miquela a long time ago, a couple years ago, just with this rise of, essentially a virtual character that had human-like qualities and a human-like narrative that people were latching onto, but she wasn't a real person.
Yeah.
We've seen a pretty dramatic increase in Vtubers and virtual humans on YouTube.
Yeah.
I want to play one that maybe you can help everyone understand what is happening here.
안녕하세요. 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 마지 룩북 세 번째 컨셉. 이번엔 조금 심플하게 준비를 해봤어요. 봄 하면
What are we watching right now?
So you're watching a Korean creator, named Rui, she sings, she does a lot of covers and stuff like that. But the thing that's interesting is that she is a real person, but her face is actually AI generated.
Okay. Why do you think people are so intrigued? I understand the novelty of, hey, I'm going to show Colin, hey, look at this. This is a virtual human. This is a VTuber. Isn't that interesting? But then beyond that, getting caught into the narrative of it, or being that's a creator that I enjoy coming back to. Why do you think that is?
I think it's the same reason you enjoy coming back to watch anything. Animated characters, fictional characters. I think back to just a couple of years ago, who's one of the biggest breakthrough creators on YouTube the last couple of years? Dream. We didn't know what his face looked like for most of that time. And did it matter? No, because he's just incredible at what he does and is a great entertainer and great at the game and everything. So he just chose not to be present on screen. And, for me, I'm a little bit less, what is this science fiction world we're going into? Because I think what I see from it is the potential for a lot of people who don't want to be on camera or who want to express themselves in a way that is different than how they may appear physically or present physically, that we're now going to get access to.
I also think many years down the line, you may see the beginning of intergenerational creators. Right? If you go really far down the line, Mickey Mouse, right, has been around for generations because it's an animated character. You can just recreate it in many forms. And now there may be a scenario where a creator is a VTuber, gets to a point in their career where they've built something really interesting, they have a business, they're excited about it, but they're done. They want to retire. Someone who maybe works for them steps in.
Yeah.
Right. And that transfer is relatively seamless.
And the better AI and generative AI get, the voice can be,
altered
AI
as well.
Yeah, the voice can be AI. So you then have a scalable human that can scale, like Colin said, hundreds of years as a brand. And I think that's an interesting business case for it. That's fascinating that maybe we'll see more companies get involved with virtual humans and virtual creators.
Yeah.
Because they have the potential to write the scripts, have the voice generated, and have this human host and connect. If people are willing to connect with virtual humans, then that feels like an obvious future.
Yeah. And I think about this all the time because immediately my mind's like, what's this going to do for beauty standards? And there's all kinds of things that come up where you immediately go there. But I don't know, I do sometimes feel like I'm the old man in this conversation and that, one of the dividing lines between generations will be our comfort with AI generated
anything
content. You know, that will probably be a dividing line. I mean, who knows?
And even it may just enter so seamlessly and kind of slower than we expect. Like we said earlier, a lot of creators are already using AI, and a lot of audiences don't really know.
Yeah.
Right. And I wonder if VTubers is a spectrum as well, where little elements of it will be ushered in, and over time, people don't even really fully realize how much they're taking in.
Yeah. And I think this is why, the creators of today who are messing with this technology and exploring it, they are defining what will happen with it in a way, because that's how it gets normalized, is people do inventive things with it, and then more people want to do that and see what happens. That's the nature of
it gets easier
internet
to do.
content. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so it is this, what's happening now is step one. And the things that I'm seeing from creators on YouTube, they're setting the tone for this.
So one of the trends from the trends report that I really want to talk about, multilanguage audio. What's really interesting there is that there are creators on the platform who are uploading videos that can be watched in multiple languages. And that is now connecting humans in a way that we've never been connected before. The fact that language is and was a barrier for humans, that we're the same species, but we actually can't communicate, may be over. And it can be something that can be done easily and quickly and perhaps cheaply by creators is pretty wild.
Let's watch an example so that the audience has a frame of reference of what this looks like. It's titled How Gas Bottles Are Made, and it's actually originally in Portuguese.
I don't know about you, but I've always been very curious about the gas cylinder.
There's an opportunity to just click the gear, switch the language between Portuguese and English.
Gás são fabricados. Bora ver?
And the English here kind of sounds obviously dubbed, right? It sounds obviously, maybe it's AI generated. Is that right?
Yeah, it is.
It is. But there's other versions of this that are using actors, right? Mr. Beast uses actors in 13 different languages.
Yep.
So you can click on one of his videos and click the gear and go into many, from Japanese to Thai to Hindi, just incredible voice acting. And it's pretty similar experience, I would imagine, in every language. This to me is one of the biggest changes to YouTube and changes to media that we've seen. I guess the question is how have you seen this already impact the platform?
Well, it's early days right now on this because it's a pretty new feature. But we've already been seeing, before this was even launched, we were starting to see Mr. Beast and other creators who were launching separate channels in other languages and seeing those channels become very popular. But you're seeing things like that creator from Brazil, who's a popular educational content creator who can now reach a much larger audience. He's using a platform called Aloud, which is a Google Area 120 project that they're trying to figure out how to create on the fly dubs across different videos and things. There's a whole tool that you can use.
So it's a Google tool.
Yes.
You can imagine a future where like similar to clicking captions on or captions not on, I can say, yeah, I want this in Japanese.
Yes, and totally. And there are lots of other third-party softwares that are starting to do this stuff now. I think the YouTube tool itself just allows you to upload whatever track, and there's like some guardrails around that and everything. But
feels to me like that's the future, though, that we upload a video and we check the box of which language we want it dubbed in.
The thought of having our interviews available in many different languages is a very exciting thought. And I think for every creator, like I think the way you get to hundreds of millions of views really is by global accessibility.
Yeah.
Right?
Exciting, but also could lead to more competition. The video we just watched, very similar to Tom Scott, right? And I wonder, like, is the competition on the platform now level?
Is it global?
Many years from now? Is it global?
Yeah.
And that is good, and that is perhaps bad at times.
The thing, I think one thing to know here, and again, I think we come at this from a sort of US perspective because dubbing and things are very popular in other countries as it is with movies and TV. And so it's a little bit less of a foreign concept. And I will say in the US, 37% of people in the survey agree that they follow a creator who creates content in a language other than their own, which is a surprising stat.
That's way higher than it was.
That's way higher than what it was.
Yeah, it is. But so you see this happening now, right? Like we're starting to have this sort of more transference of things, but there are differences in culture. And I don't want to sort of diminish the importance of cultural differences. There are trends, the way that dance trends work in Africa is different than the way they work here because of the culture of the place. And, I think it's not like everything exists the same way everywhere. And so the things that will matter to people, the conversations that matter and things will vary. And so the appeal of those perspectives will vary, as well. But you're no longer limited by the ability to speak a language potentially. And that has huge potential to change as a viewer, as a consumer, the perspectives that we have access to, right? The creativity we have access to.
My hope is that it promotes empathy, that there are videos that eventually come across my feed from countries that I know little about and that I probably would not have learned about had I not learned about them through this creator.
Yeah. It's funny because early viral video YouTube, if you actually just went and looked at the most popular things, it was a lot of cats and a lot of babies and the pets and babies. And the reason for that was those things were language agnostic. You could watch like one of the most popular cat videos all time was this like cat hugging video. It was in Russian, but there was no language in the video. So now we're all of a sudden in this place where that we've removed the language barrier. And so now like everything can have that potential to resonate with people in the way that something that's so universal that was, language agnostic did in the past.
For me, I agree on that. Like, I think the importation of other cultures to the US has already really started. Largely, like Korean culture has really impacted US entertainment, right? Like Parasite, Squid Game. There's a new Netflix show, I think Physical 100. It's a Korean show. Like the Korean style of entertainment clearly connects with the US audience. And that was not really a thing before. Totally. And you imagine that today, could there be a Korean Casey Neistat that emerges? That, someone in South Korea who is vlogging every day and we get access to what does life in Korea look like and get to watch it in English.
Yeah.
Or someone in India can watch it in Hindi. And that to me is interesting. Like, is there a possibility for global creators? And I assume a lot of the American creators are relatively global, and I guess Mr. Beast is the obvious example here, that when he launched his other language channels, he was reaching millions and millions of people. You put that all into one channel now, and it's like, that's probably the first like really mega global creator.
Yeah.
That is understood in 13 languages.
Yeah, no, it's true. Captions are also big. And so a lot of people do watch stuff with captions. 50% of people in the US agree that they prefer to watch content with subtitles and closed captions on. So, which is kind of a crazy stat. And when you look at the Gen Z slice, so 18 to 24 slice of that in terms of how many of them do actually say they watch captions regularly, there's a big jump there. So I do think like
what an interesting population.
It's true, but I think like captions and things like we are already primed, I think, for expanding, and there's lots of reasons why people use captions. Some of them are situational because you know there's background noise or whatever. But like, I do think we're already primed to have an experience that is text-based or audio-based in these ways that unlocks a lot of that.
I wonder if it ends up leading to the ability to have a monoculture again. Of course, there will always be individualized experiences. But when you think about Squid Game, that kind of was a monocultural moment. And I think that's because it was released in, you know, a lot of languages. I don't know what the exact number was. It was like 80 to 100 languages or something on the exact day that it was released. And because of that, everyone all over the world was able to experience it simultaneously.
Sort of. You had to pay for the subscription,
True.
right?
There's a barrier, of course, of like, there's a barrier of paying for a subscription.
Yeah, and like,
obviously. But
the ring fencing of that stuff, like it's.
But on YouTube, in the future, there's not as much a barrier, especially with internet being available increasingly all over the world. That could be a reality that something gets uploaded.
It could be, but I think everything else is also sending this opposite signal, which is that given the choice between this thing that everybody likes and this thing that I know you like, you'll probably want the thing that we know you like, you know? And so it'll be interesting to see the interplay between this more personalized, individualized pop culture and the ability for people to, you know, no longer be obstructed by language barriers.
Maybe if anything, it just connects subcultures all over
I think
the world.
that
right?
to me is the more interesting application, right? Which is the elevator video channels can all communicate with each other, you know? And what will that be? It's like kind of a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
you know?
That is really interesting. Like the weird subcultures can now connect globally.
Yeah.
Like the ASMR video from, you know, Japan can connect with the ASMR video from Brazil.
Yeah.
Like that's
even for us, like the creator economy, YouTube enthusiasts all over the world can connect.
That's true. Yeah. One of the biggest themes of the report, and it was a line that really hit me, was this concept of the loss of monoculture and the rise of personalization. And as I thought about everything that's happening, all the big shifts that are happening in media with generative AI technology, with you know, multi-language audio, with the amount that we can personalize our experience online, it's hard to have a singular stream of culture. You mentioned you were involved in Rewind.
Yeah.
And I thought about, you know, obviously Rewind famously kind of ended and was like, you know, disliked. I think the most disliked video on YouTube. But I thought about the concept of, could Rewind happen today? And I don't think it could, because I think everyone's YouTube experience is so vastly different now that I'm not positive there could be a single, here's the biggest things that happened.
Yeah.
Because the biggest thing, in my opinion, is different from the biggest things in your opinion.
Yes.
Right? And your experience.
I'm so glad you finally invited me here to clear the air about YouTube.
We should clear the air. You know?
Yeah. Well, look, the thing, someone. I'm going to go back and I can't believe you were talking.
I can't believe this whole thing turned into a rewind.
It haunts me. It haunts me. But
title changes to confronting YouTube employee
about Rewind.
About the fall of Rewind.
But Rewind actually broke like 4 rewinds earlier than that, and I don't think anybody really noticed. But for us, we could kind of see it. But everybody loved it so much that we didn't want to give up on the dream of it. But like
I always had a dream of being in Rewind, and I can't believe it ended before we could even be a part of it. But whatever.
This is our version of being in YouTube Rewind.
But the first couple, it really is emblematic of where YouTube was at that time. It was a very US-centric platform at the time in terms of the top creators and everything. And you could get them all in a room. Like, I mean, VidCon was like that, right? Like you would just, all the top creators would be there because they all knew Hank, you know, like and John. That's how YouTube and internet culture was at that point. But it's interesting if you go back, and I'm not talking about the last one, which is its own thing, but if you look at some of the ones previous to that, you started to see the dislikes kind of going up on those things. And part of it is that you had people being like, I don't know who any of these people are.
Yeah.
And we got to I think the 2017 one, and there was no person who worked at YouTube who could tell you who everyone in the video was.
Wow.
Like I was like, my team helps figure out the video and no one could explain who all the people were. And it's because, you know, and you see, who is this person? It's like, well, you don't watch Brazilian YouTube. So like, of course you don't know this, or you don't watch creators in India. So like, yes, I get why you don't know this and stuff, but it just became so it was already a bit of a far-fetched idea that you could create that singular view of what was popular, but it just really broke down over time. It's true. It's not possible. It's not that could it be possible? It's literally not possible because I feel like I've thought about this a bunch. And it is because we are in this time, this era of a more fragmented popular culture where, we may be familiar with the same topic or the same conversation, but we may experience it in a completely different way. And when we do have singular moments, but in many cases, the stuff that we watch, the things that we care about are unique. There's a stat from the Trends Report last year that I love. I cite it all the time, which is that more than half of Gen Z watch content that no one they know personally is interested in, right? And it's like I was a student of mass media. Like I was fascinated by film. I'm sure you guys were too. Like given what you do, but the idea that not only are people watching content that no one they know is interested in, that 50% of an entire demographic is watching content that no one they even know also likes is emblematic of this change. And it's really confounding and confronting for a lot of people who make content and who make creative work and whose job it is to reach large audiences, because it just flies in the face of how you think about distribution and these things. But it's the reality of how things work today. And it's interesting how much personality drives that interest, right? And topics. And when we look at groups of channels that are all focused on a similar topic and how big some of those audiences can be. You're not sacrificing size necessarily for this, but you are introducing this feeling that you're not in step with how everyone else is. It's funny how often, and I'm curious how you guys feel about this. It's funny how often I will talk to creators and ask them if they have trouble feeling like they're keeping up with what everybody else is talking about. And to a man or woman, everyone says the same thing. Yes, that they struggle with that. And it's just the reality of where we are now with different platforms, different formats, different personalization algorithms, all this stuff together.
Yeah, I think it's the beauty of the internet and of YouTube and what drew us to it originally, right? Like we started by making videos about lacrosse in 2012 on YouTube. Everyone around me was like, that is not a good idea. But we were able to carve out a pocket of people who were interested in that as well. And that has been the theme of our entire career is, can we talk about something we're into? And it feels like none of our friends are into it, but can we find people on the internet who are into it? And that proved to be true.
Yeah.
And I think that like incredible rise of personalization has only accelerated now with multi-format and with like everyone becoming a creator. Like for us, we released an interview with Destroying a few weeks ago. Now that interview went live, a couple 100,000 views, but then we saw a short that had 1.5 million views from the conversation that we didn't cut, that someone else cut. And then we saw other shorts from that conversation that had hundreds of thousands of views. And I recognized that more people had watched those shorts than had watched the original source material. So they were experiencing that conversation or that moment completely differently than we had intended them to experience it. And also they experienced it in their own way through the shorts feed, through a small bite size, maybe through someone sending them that clip. And maybe they'll never watch the long form piece, but the person who watched the long form piece and the short form piece actually consumed the same 60 seconds, but just completely differently and with different intents. And you zoom out and think about that as everyone is becoming creators, as people are clipping things and remixing things and saying, here's the source material, but it applies to my community like this, right? Because there's like financial YouTube channels that take some of our clips and take what we're talking about in the context of finances or business and curate our show for their community. And they might never come and watch our show, but they're experiencing our source material in a way that's relevant and personal to them.
Yeah.
And yeah, that feels
there's
the
a
biggest
stat
difference.
in the report about how people would rather watch a creator talk about an event than watch the event itself.
Yeah, 45% of people in the US would prefer to watch creators breaking down a major event than the event itself.
That's pretty interesting. And I think when I think about that, I assume, the event must be the Grammys or the Super Bowl. But it's actually further down the chain, like it's a Colin and Samir episode with destroying.
Yeah.
Like there are some people who may actually just rather watch a clip or someone else's interpretation of it.
Yeah, I think, I fall into this category. If something big happens, I'm interested in hearing about it from Ludwig on Mogul Mail or from Phil DeFranco. Like I want them to contextualize it for me because they're part of my community. So I'd rather watch it there than on the news or somewhere else.
Yeah.
And there's people who, would prefer Moist Critical or so everyone has their own news anchor in some ways, right?
Any tech keynote, I'm just going to watch the Marquez video.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd much rather
totally. I didn't watch the Apple keynote. I watched Marquez's videos. It's so interesting and then that is completely different from how all of my friends experienced that one event. That feels like a very substantial difference in the direction of YouTube and the direction of media that I think all creators should be thinking about. And sometimes we've thought about it after we read the report of like, how does this impact us? And sometimes what we think about is we're too late to talk about a subject matter. Sometimes we're like, so many people have already made the video. We don't need to talk about that. But then recognizing that actually there's a lot of people who would want to hear us talk about it, even if that event happened weeks ago, our community hasn't heard it in their personal way from us.
Totally.
And that's something that, at least for us, when we read the report, we were like, that's a tangible thing that we can now take into our creative process to say, hey, you know what? We are building our own subculture, right? The Colin and Samir world is a subculture. It's a community in itself. That's a part of a broader community. And then within our community, there's even more communities. There's a funny meme that someone made in our Discord that's an iceberg that goes underwater, and it shows the different layers of fandom of our community. And it's fascinating to look at because I had never put vocabulary around it, but they did. And they showed like, okay, if you're at the tip of the iceberg, you watch the main channel interviews, right? But then you go all the way to the bottom and it's like a very niche reference to something that we talk about.
Yeah.
And it shows the different layers. And I think what's added to this is the fact that our audience, like that fans are creators and creators are fans, right? Like we are fans of a bunch of creators that we watch. We're creators ourselves. So we can take inspiration from them and create something. And then our community who watches us can create not only for the broader YouTube community, but like people can emerge within our community as creators for the community, which is a pretty wild
there's like an economy to fandom.
Yeah.
There's also the element that a lot of the people who work for us or with us started out as fans of ours early on and now work here with us or work on the Discord. There was something I remember hearing about like K-pop fans who are like full-time fans covering what's happening with like their favorite K-pop band.
Totally.
Can you describe the different levels of fandom and the hierarchies and
I wish I had an iceberg to show you, but I think the way that I think about it and the way that my team thinks about it is you kind of have this surface level, engaging with the content as a consumption, a light level of interest in something related to it. Then you kind of go to this next level where you're become a more active participant in that, whether that is commenting or some sort of lighter weight thing, or whether it's making short form clipping. We're seeing millions of clips now, people using the clipping features on YouTube, clipping and stuff happening, to another tier where you've got sort of, I don't know, these are the presidents of your fan club type of thing where you are, you have some sense of influence within that fan community, right? And that's where a lot of the K-pop stuff comes in. The K-pop economy and groups have really mastered how to enable an entire entertainment experience that exists within the fandom of something. And this, obviously we have this in other things. You look at big IPs like Star Wars and stuff. They've always done this, but like
or like the Dream SMP.
Yeah,
there are so many levels of fandom within the Dream SMP where there are creators creating their own offshoots.
Right. Totally. So this exists, but like then you get to and even another tier where you're at a professional. You're actually earning your living as a fan of stuff, and sometimes that's quite broad. You look at. I like to joke, and I actually stole this from my wife, but like a lot of the biggest YouTube creators you could describe as professional fans.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I would say we are kind of professional fans, right? We're fans of YouTube and of these creators and of the space. Marquez is a fan of technology, right? Like
Anthony Fantano, Needle Drop, like
Anthony
there's like
Fantano
a long list. There's like so many of those folks, and some of them branch out and do other things, but often there is this commonality, I think, because what is being a fan? It's being passionate about something, and the single most important thread between what makes stuff successful and that exists on YouTube is the number of people who are passionate about something. That's like it's a passion-driven platform in a lot of ways. So it makes sense that these two things go together.
I think fandom is what's driving the culture ultimately. Like, of course, you have to have creators put out source material, but it's the fans that then take it and iterate. I'll never forget when you talked to us about Amelia de Moldenberg's chicken shop date with Louis Theroux and how that one moment got turned into a viral
I don't
trend.
think we can play the clip, so maybe we should sing it just so people are familiar.
I can't sing it, but
Louis Theroux says he remembers a rap that he is talking about.
Yep.
I like it when you jiggle, jiggle.
Yes.
My money don't.
Oh, my money don't jiggle, jiggle. It folds. I like it when you wiggle, wiggle. Faux show. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so if you're familiar with it, I hope.
Yeah.
Not you, but them. Yeah.
But everybody. I told you about it.
You're the one who told us about it.
But, you explained how like that one moment resulted in this whole stream of creation that eventually really drove culture, drove a moment in time.
Yeah, totally.
And there's probably only a few people who have watched the original interview from Amelia.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally. And Amelia, her whole thing is that she's a fan of usually it's rappers. Like she's usually got UK rappers on that show, and she's just a fan of UK hip hop.
Yeah.
And that's what the whole premise of that show is.
Yeah. But I think that example is one that, you were talking about the fragmentation. It's almost like a light that's going through a prism where it's like, here's the original source. It goes through a prism and just goes in all these different directions, right?
Yeah.
It turns into a dance.
Yeah.
Like that song turned into a trending dance. It turned into a song. It turned into a Jason Derulo song,
A Jason
right?
Derulo song, yeah.
It like,
and Amelia was in the music video.
Yeah, it went like so many different directions, and everyone experienced that moment differently.
Yeah.
And also, to me, it feels like everyone experienced that. But it's also possible that a ton of people did not experience it.
Yeah.
And that is like the thing that has been blowing my mind so much of this concept, that everything that feels like the end all be all, the biggest moment of the week in the internet, the amount of people who don't experience it and have their own version of the biggest moment.
Yeah. I've been giving talks for YouTube for a very long time. And it's always a 3-point talk. One of those points is always participation. And it's been that way for years. But now you're really seeing what that looks like at scale, because you've got a whole generation of people who grew up using these technologies, right? Who are very fluent in using video to express themselves and in engaging around video content. And so it's all just accelerating. But because of the way that the personalization works, the media that is created becomes part of the phenomena, and that may be the lens or the path in that you experience, which wasn't always the case in the past.
There was something that was referenced in the report of a Brazilian creator who got the rights to stream the World Cup and was able to actually have people watch the World Cup with him. I think that's emblematic of this concept that people want to watch these events with creators.
Yeah.
Dude Perfect is doing Thursday Night Football, right? Where you can watch a stream with them. You talk about the Mannings, right? Watching football with the Mannings. Like, you now have this one source, and it's how do I want to consume it?
Yeah.
Do I want to consume it, with this creator, that creator, in that style, with this community? You have your own personalized version of it. Yeah. So what does this all mean? We have all these trends. We kind of have our own takeaways. Like, this has really informed a lot of how we think about the future. Probably the burning question for everyone listening is like, so are we going to get replaced by robots? Is AI going to kill us all? What is happening here? What can we take from this report?
The AI killing us all part is, I think, not in my lifetime, so I'm not worried about it presently, but future generations.
Possible.
No, I am actually, as much as I feel a sense of anxiety about some of the things that we're seeing, I find myself a bit optimistic about this from a creative perspective, because what I think it enables is it unlocks You guys talked about you had Miles
Fisher.
Fisher on, and one of the things that you talked about early in the interview was how talent and the actual skill of being a performer was still so central to the work that he does.
Right. He does this deep fake Tom Cruise, and for me, if he wasn't such a good performer, it's not convincing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I believe that you can extrapolate that across a lot of the things that we're seeing, which is the human creativity, the human insight is the differentiator, right? If everybody can make everything and make it, then it becomes the insight, the perspective, the unique point of view that matters. So the thing that makes me optimistic about this is that I do think we are in this sort of transitional moment, perhaps, or not, who knows, in this moment that seems to bring with it a lot of change in the tools that we use, the technology that we have available to us as consumers and as creators. But it should, theoretically, as one output, create a world in which we have access to more perspectives. We have access to more unique points of view and new types of creativity than we have today. Vtubers, do I think, and virtual humans, I don't think that replaces the creators that we love today. I think that opens up a whole new set of creators that would maybe have not made content in the past that I might now be able to hear from. So that's my optimist's view on this whole thing. And I think there's a lot of opportunity right now to figure out what this means for you and the unique perspective that you have on the creative process and the things you're passionate about in your business and whatnot. But I am optimistic.
I also am optimistic. And for me, I think the biggest takeaway is the availability of tools and the new tools that have emerged, whether it's multi-language audio, generative AI, that are lowering the barrier to entry for some people, but also enhancing creativity for others, right? You look at Corridor Crew, again, the input, the amount of time they put towards making that animation, it was not easy. It still took time and intelligence that no one else really had, right, for them to create that, but they were able to make something totally new and novel and interesting with these new tools that we have.
I would say for me, the biggest takeaway I have is in this concept of the rise of personalization. I think a lot of creators feel a level of anxiety around needing to achieve extremely high viewership levels to make a career. Millions of views, and that's how you make a career on YouTube. I actually think because we're moving in this direction of more and more personalization, we're moving to a place where you can build a very tight-knit core community, and that carries a lot of value. And I think a huge part of how you do that is opening up participation and allowing people to participate in the conversation that you're starting. And that creates a very sticky audience that is their world. Just like we talked about, that's their culture. And if you can create culture for a group of people, then you have the opportunity to have a career.
And you're only competing with yourself.
Yeah.
You're not competing with everyone else making similar types of content because you have your own world, your own community, and your own subculture.
Yeah. The thing that it goes back to your point earlier of are we too late to get into this conversation?
Right.
If the most important thing in that conversation is your perspective on that topic, then you can never be too late.
Right. Right. Where can people find this report? And if people are as big of YouTube nerds as all of us, how do they learn more about all of this? Because I spend time with your resources, so I'd love to give them.
Yeah, YouTube.com/trends has a lot of the big reports that we put out. We have a YouTube channel. We sometimes put things on, but YouTube.com/trends is the best place to sort of see the more report type stuff that we put out like this.
We can also put the link in the description.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah.
Thanks. That's so nice.
There you go. We'll put the link in the description.
Yeah, we'll put that in there. Kevin, thanks so much for joining. This was awesome, man.
This has been so fun. Thank you for having me.
This was really fun. Thanks again to YouTube for sponsoring this episode. If you want to check out the Trends Report for yourself, just click the link in our description.